she expected.
Ada once absorbed quietly now showed itself in moments Kemi couldn't ignore.
She dropped the phone, covering her face.
Kemi told herself every marriage had adjustments. Still, Ada was learning how to live without explaining her pain. She moved cities, took a new job, rebuilt routines. This is the story of Ada, who gave her heart, her time, and her life to a man for 7 years, only to be abandoned, and he got married to 4 months. By the 7th year, Ada didn't count time anymore. She counted sacrifices. She counted the mornings she woke up earlier than she needed to, just so she wouldn't leave the house hungry. She counted the nights she stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing because too afraid to start. She counted the birthdays the anniversaries only she remembered, the dreams she kept postponing because we are building something. 7 years was not a number to her, it was a life. They met when life was still light enough to laugh about. When love was loud. When promises were easy because the future felt far away. Chidi, full of ideas, always talking about where he was going to be in 5 years. Ada listened like a believer listens to prophecy. She saw greatness in him before it would to anyone else. She believed in him before he believed in himself. When his business failed, she didn't flinch. She was there with encouragement and soft words, telling him failure didn't define him. When he moved back into his brother's apartment, Ada adjusted her life without complaint. She cut down on her own expenses. Without announcing it. She carried emotional weight like it was a rest. People around them used to joke. "Oh, Ada is already acting like a wife." And she would smile. Because she thought she was practicing for the real thing. Chidi never asked her to. He never said, "Do this for me." He just allowed it. He accepted her loyalty like it was an unspoken agreement, like something he was entitled to simply by existing. He never planned surprises. Never remembered dates on him. Never bought gifts unless she hinted strongly, and even then, it came with excuses. "You know I'm not good with all those things. You know I'm focused on building my future. You know when I make it, you'll enjoy." Ada swallowed those words like medicine. Bitter, but hopeful. Trips were always postponed. Plans were always next year. Marriage was always soon. Soon became a dangerous word. She cooked for him even when she was tired. She prayed for him when he lost direction. She defended him when people asked uncomfortable questions. 7 years and no ring. Ada would laugh it off. He's worth the wait. But slowly, the waiting started hollowing her out. Chidi changed without announcing it. His phone became private. His replies became delayed. His presence became partial. He was always tired, always busy, always somewhere else mentally. Conversations turned shallow. Arguments ended with silence instead of resolution. Ada noticed. She always noticed. She noticed that he no longer asked about her day. But when she dressed up, he barely looked twice. That intimacy became mechanical, like a routine he wanted to finish quickly. She noticed the way he sighed when she talked about the future, the way his eyes drifted when she mentioned marriage. Still, she stayed. Because 7 years feels too heavy to drop. Then, one evening, while absent-mindedly through social media, she saw her. The girl was radiant in that effortless way. New, untouched by disappointment. Her smile was loud. Her captions were playful. And there, in the background of one photo, was Chidi's arm. Ada stared at the screen longer than she should have. She didn't accuse him. Not immediately. She watched. She observed the way his mood lifted after outside. The way he smiled at messages he never... The way he suddenly started caring about his appearance. One night, she asked gently, "Is there someone else?" Chidi. He didn't deny angrily. He sighed. Sigh hurt more than any confession. Ada, we've grown apart. 7 years reduced. He told her he needed space. He told her he wasn't ready for marriage. He told her he needed to find him. He told her things she had already sacrificed herself to help him find. She moved out quietly. No drama. No, just disbelief sitting heavy in her chest. For months later, the wedding pictures appeared. A destination proposal. Coordinated outfits. Kneeling, holding a ring he once claimed he couldn't afford. Vacations. Gift. Public declarations of love. Every Ada. The caption read, "When you know, you know." Ada collapsed on in a living thing. Because the truth hit her slowly, painful. He wasn't incapable.
In a place where people pretended they were in a place where people pretended they weren't lonely. A place where conversations were light, laughter was
seriously
forced,
immediately.
and everyone carried their private emptiness like a handbag they never put down.
In places
He was
had
calm,
once suggested
polite,
and been told
intentional,
too
the
expensive,
kind of man who
or
looked you in the
unnecessary
eye when you spoke.
distractions.
She noticed that
There were
at
captions
first.
about
Not his
soulmates,
watch,
about
not his
answered
shoes,
prayers,
his attention.
about how love was effortless.
He didn't scroll
when
his
it was
phone
right.
while she talked,
Effortless.
didn't interrupt, didn't rush.
That word echoed
When
in
she
Ada's
asked what
head
he
like
did for
mockery.
work, he answered
She
simply.
remembered begging him
When she asked
once,
where he lived,
gently,
he answered
for a
clearly.
weekend away.
When
Just
she
2
asked,
days.
half joking,
Somewhere
half
quiet.
serious, Are you
Somewhere
married?
they could
He
breathe.
smiled. No.
Why do we need to
not
travel to be
defensive.
happy? He had said.
Not offended.
Isn't
No.
being together
That was
enough?
the moment her guard lowered.
Now he
Because
was
women
flying
learn
across
early.
countries,
Married men
smiling
hesitate.
into cameras,
Married men
holding
dodge.
another woman like she was
Married men
Glass.
over-explain. This man
Ada tried
didn't.
to move on the
And
respectable
that's
way.
how it started.
She blocked
He called
him.
the next day. Then the
She
day
muted
after.
keywords.
Then every morning.
She focused on
Good morning
work.
messages that came early
But
before
heartbreak isn't
sunrise.
obedient.
Long voice
It
notes
shows
at
up
night.
uninvited.
When the world was quiet enough to
songs.
confess things. He told
In
her
smells.
about his dreams,
In
his
random quiet
frustrations,
moments when your
his
mind
plans.
betrays you.
He said he wanted
What
peace.
hurt the most
Said he was
wasn't
tired
that
of
he
stress.
married someone
Said he
else.
wanted a woman who would
It was
understand
how
him.
quickly he became the
She
man
understood.
she had begged
She
him to
always
be.
did. Within weeks,
Suddenly,
the
he
gifts
was
started.
attentive,
Nothing cheap,
romantic,
nothing random. Things that said,
intentional.
I see you.
Suddenly,
Money when
he
being
remembered
short
dates,
on rent. Without her
planned
asking.
surprises,
A surprise phone upgrade.
bought gifts
Clothes
just
he picked
because.
himself.
Suddenly,
You deserve
he
good
knew how to
things,
love
he
properly.
said. And she
Also,
believed
it
him.
seemed
He took her on trips.
people started
Not
asking
rushed
Eddie
weekend
questions
escapes.
disguised as concern.
Real trips.
Were you
Hotels
too
with mirrors
demanding?
everywhere.
Maybe you
Rooms that
stayed
smelled
too
like
long.
money and silence.
Some
He
men
held
just know when
her
they
hand
need
in
the right
public.
one.
Posted food
Each
pictures at the
question
same
felt like
table.
a subtle
Never
accusation.
hit her.
As if
She
her
teased
endurance
him. You're
had been a flaw.
spoiling me too much.
As
He
if
laughed.
loyalty
I'm
was a mistake.
investing in my future.
She stopped explaining
That
herself.
word stayed with her.
What nobody knew
Future.
was that
He
Ada
promised
replayed
marriage
their
slowly,
7 years
not
like
dramatically,
a courtroom drama in her
in
head,
fragments. Any
searching for the exact
woman
moment
who
she became
marries me will
invisible
never
to him.
suffer.
She
I'm
wondered
not
if she
like
had
other
loved too
men.
hard,
I want to
supported
do
too
things
much,
the right way. He talked
tolerated
about
too long.
kids,
But
about
love
building
shouldn't be a
together,
crime.
about timing,
Meanwhile,
always timing.
marriage
She
settled
never
into
pushed
Chidi's life like
because
a new suit.
He was already giving her
He wore
everything.
it proudly.
Or so it seemed.
Introduced
Somewhere
Kemi
else,
everywhere.
in a different house, with
Called
walls
her my wife
that had
with
heard too much.
emphasis,
His wife
like
was
a badge of
asking
honor.
questions.
People
Not accusations.
congratulated him endlessly.
Questions. Can you send
No
money
one
for
asked
food?
about Ada.
The kids' school
At
called
first,
again.
Kemi
We need to
felt
fix
like she
the
had
generator.
won something
And
rare.
his answers were
She
always
married
the
a
same.
man who
Not
seemed fully
now.
formed, emotionally
Things
present,
are tight.
financially
Next week,
stable,
he
and
said it
eager to
calmly,
please.
repeatedly.
She did
He
things
said it
for her
while sitting on
without
hotel
being asked.
beds in another
He
city.
listened.
He said it after buying
He planned.
gifts with her name on
He
them.
showed up.
He said it while
Compared to her
promising a
past
future to someone who
relationships,
thought she
He felt
was
like
chosen.
an answered prayer.
At home, his
But
wife
marriage has a
started
way of
shrinking
slowing
her
time down.
needs, buying
When
less,
the excitement
asking
of
less,
being newly chosen faded, small
apologizing
things
for asking.
began to surface.
She didn't know there was
Tiny
another woman.
inconsistencies.
She only knew her
Moments
husband
that
had
didn't
become
quite fit
distant,
the picture.
and distance hurts
She
more than
avoided
insults.
certain conversations.
The woman, the one who
He
thought
shut
she
down
was
when
loved,
conflicts arose.
noticed small things
He
too.
hated being
Missed
questioned.
calls that came only
He
at
was
certain
generous
hours.
with money but
Trips
stingy with
that couldn't be
accountability.
extended.
Apologies
Moments where
were
he
rare.
went quiet when his
Reflection
phone
was
rang.
uncomfortable.
She asked once, "Is
When
everything
Kemi
okay?"
asked about his past,
He sighed.
especially Ada,
Family
his
stress.
answers
You
were
know
vague.
how it is.
She was
She
nice,
nodded,
but
because
we
she
weren't
trusted
compatible.
him. Because liars
It
don't
just
always
didn't
look
work
like
out.
villains. Sometimes they
It
look
was
like
a long
men
time
who say all the
ago.
right things.
7
The
years
truth didn't
reduced
arrive
to
loudly.
a long time
Never
ago.
does. Came
Kemi
through
noticed how
whispers,
quickly he
through a
withdrew
name
when she
mentioned too
expressed
carefully,
emotional needs.
through a
How he
coincidence
grew
that
cold when
refused
she
to stay
cried.
silent.
How he
Picture,
became defensive
child's face,
instead of
a
empathetic.
comment that didn't make
The same
sense.
nonchalant
suddenly,
attitude Ada once absorbed
everything
quietly
she
now
believed
showed
began
itself
to shake,
in moments
not
Kemi
crack.
couldn't ignore.
Because when the lie
Still,
is big
Kemi told
enough, your
herself every
mind
marriage
fights
had
to protect
adjustments.
it. He wouldn't.
Still,
There-
Ada was
there must
learning
be
how
an
to live without
explanation.
explaining her
I
pain.
would have known,
She moved
but the
cities,
signs kept coming.
took a
And
new job,
somewhere at the same time,
rebuilt routines.
his wife was learning too.
She learned how
Learning
to
that
sit
the money
with
didn't
silence without
disappear.
attaching
It
memories
was
to
redirected.
it.
Learning that the
Some
stress
days were easy.
wasn't work. It was deception.
Some days felt like
Learning that
betrayal
her
all
marriage
over again.
hadn't been failing quietly.
One evening,
It had been
while
abandoned
cleaning up
loudly,
old emails,
just not
she
in her
stumbled
presence.
upon a message
Two
Chidi
women,
had sent years
men.
ago.
One
I
life he
can't
was
wait to
tired
marry
of,
you someday.
one fantasy
She
he
stared
was
at the
feeding,
screen until
and neither
the words blurred.
woman had the full truth.
He hadn't lied.
The first
He
confirmation
just
didn't
hadn't
come from
meant
him.
her.
Never does.
And that
It
realization
came from a
finally
stranger's
shifted something
mouth, spoken
in her chest.
casually, without
Because
knowing it would
sometimes
collapse
the
an
deepest
entire
betrayal
life.
isn't abandonment.
She was standing in line somewhere
It's being
ordinary,
used as preparation
one of
for
those
someone
places
else.
where nothing important is
Healing did
supposed to
not arrive
happen.
as peace.
When she heard his
It
name,
arrived as honesty.
not just the name, full
Ada
name,
stopped
followed
pretending
by,
she was fine.
his wife is
She
so
let
quiet.
herself feel angry without
You know
guilt.
she has 2 kids, right?
She let
Her body
herself grieve the
reacted
version
before
of
her
her life
mind
that
did.
never happened.
A heat rushed
She
through
stopped
her chest.
romanticizing suffering
Her
and
ears
started questioning
rang. Her
why she had
hands
been
went
taught
cold.
that endurance
She smiled
was the same as
politely
love.
because shock
In the
teaches
new
you
city,
manners.
no one
Sorry,
knew her
who?
story.
The woman repeated
No
the
one
name.
called her the
Laughed
patient
lightly.
girlfriend.
You know him.
No one
Married
measured her
guy.
worth by
Very
how long
private.
she stayed.
Doesn't bring his
She was
wife
simply
around
Ada
much.
again.
Married,
She poured
2
herself
kids,
into work,
private.
not to
Every
escape
word landed
pain,
like a slap.
but to remember her competence.
She went home and sat on the edge of her
Slowly,
bed
she
without removing
rediscovered
her
things
shoes.
she had abandoned
For a long
while
time.
waiting for a
That night,
future that
she
never
didn't
came.
confront him.
Writing,
She did something worse. Check.
long walks,
Not aggressively,
silence
not
that didn't
desperately,
feel empty.
carefully. She
Men
scrolled with
noticed her.
shaking fingers,
Some were
searched
kind,
names, looked at tags,
some were
comments,
curious.
dates. A woman's page
She didn't
appeared.
rush.
A woman with tired
She had
eyes.
learned the cost
A woman
of
who
ignoring
didn't
red
smile for the
flags
camera,
painted as
but for her
patience.
children.
One night,
woman whose captions spoke of patience, faith, endurance, and there he was,
landed gently
in
but firmly.
pieces. A shoulder in one
Had not
picture,
lost 7
a shadow
years.
in another,
She
a
had
hand she
invested them in
recognized
someone who cashed
instantly.
out elsewhere.
Her stomach turned,
And
because suddenly
that truth
everything
didn't
made
make her weak.
sense. The money, the
It
secrecy,
made her wiser.
the family
Marriage
stress,
exposed
the way
Chidi
he
in
never
ways dating
stayed late,
never could.
the way he always had an
The
excuse.
man who planned
She
elaborate
wasn't
surprises
special.
grew tired of
She
performing.
was scheduled. She
The
called him.
attentiveness
He
began
didn't
to
answer.
feel optional.
She called again. He
Slowly,
picked up on the
the
third
version
ring.
of himself
Hey,
he had
baby.
presented to Kemi
His
became
voice.
exhausting to maintain.
Warm. Familiar.
Kemi
It
started
hurt more than
noticing
if he had
patterns she couldn't
shouted.
unsee.
Are you married?
How
Silence.
disagreements
Not
ended in
confusion.
silence.
Not shock.
How
Silence.
accountability
That was the
felt
loudest
like an
sound
attack
she had
to him.
ever heard.
How he
Who told you
avoided
that?
emotional labor
He
the
asked
same
finally.
way he once avoided
Not no.
commitment.
Not why would you think that?
When she
Who told
tried
you?
to communicate,
Her
he
chest
accused her of
tightened.
being dramatic.
How many children do you
When
have?
she expressed
She
disappointment,
Another
he reminded
pause.
her of
Then
everything he
the lie
provided
came,
materially.
slow and careful.
Isn't that enough?
It's complicated.
The same question
Complicated. A
recycled.
word men use when the
She found
truth would
herself
destroy
lonely in a
the
house
version
that
of
looked
themselves they
perfect
want to keep.
online.
At the same
The
time,
gifts
in another
continued,
house,
but the
his
presence
wife
faded.
was holding a phone too.
The trips
Her
became
hands
fewer.
weren't shaking
The
They were
affection
steady.
became conditional.
because grief settles
evening,
differently
during
when it has
a
been
particularly
waiting.
tense
She had
argument,
found receipts,
Kemi asked a question that
hotel
had been
bookings,
forming quietly in
transfers,
her mind.
names that weren't
Why
hers.
didn't you marry
She
her?
remembered the nights he
Chidi
said he was
froze.
working late.
Not
The
because he
mornings he
didn't have an
said he
answer,
was broke.
but because
The days she
truth
skipped
had
meals so
nowhere
the
to hide any.
children could eat. And
I
suddenly
wasn't ready
she
then,
understood.
he said.
Her husband
Kemi
hadn't been
didn't ask the
failing.
question out
He
loud,
had been
but
choosing.
it screamed
The
inside her.
other woman cried
Ready
alone.
for marriage,
Not
or ready
dramatic
to lose her.
sobs. Quiet tears
night,
that soaked
She
in
cried
pillows
silently
and left
beside the man
stains
who
no one
had
would
once
see.
promised her
She
forever
replayed
with
everything.
confidence.
Every promise,
She realized
every trip,
something
every
terrifying.
gift. He had
If a
said,
man could give his
I don't
best
want
to win
a
you
woman who will
and
stress me.
withdraw it once you stay,
He had said,
then love
You're
was not
different.
the problem.
He had said,
Character
wait
was.
for me. And she
The
had
twist
waited
didn't come as
for a man
revenge.
who already had a home.
It came as timing.
When she confronted him
career
again, he
flourished
was
quietly.
angry. That surprised her.
Opportunities aligned.
How could you embarrass
Her
me
name
like
began
this?
to carry weight
He
in rooms
snapped.
she once dreamed
Embarrassed.
of entering.
Not I'm sorry.
She
Not I
didn't
lied.
post much,
Embarrassed.
but when she did,
You knew I
it was
was under
evident
pressure, he
she had grown.
continued. You knew I had
Not
responsibilities.
not bitter.
She laughed then. Sharp,
Just
broken
solid.
laugh.
A
I
mutual
asked you if you were married.
invited her
You
to an
shouldn't have
industry
pushed,
event.
he said. That when
Ada
she
almost
realized
declined.
something terrifying.
Something nudged her to go.
Didn't see what he did as wrong.
She walked
He saw it as
confident,
necessary.
composed,
Meanwhile,
Building
his
up
wife
to
didn't
breathe free.
scream. She didn't fight.
There he
She
was.
didn't post. She did something quieter. She watched.
Tired
She
in
watched
a way
him lie
success
without
couldn't hide.
blinking. She
His
watched
smile
him
faltered
defend
when he saw
himself
her.
with anger.
For the
She
first
watched
time
him
in years,
turn her
he
pain
looked
into
unsure.
inconvenience.
They
And something inside her went
exchanged polite
cold.
greetings.
Not bitter. Cold.
Nothing dramatic.
Two women now knew the truth.
No accusations.
But they didn't know each other.
No closure speeches.
And he still believed he
Just
could
two
control
people
the
standing
story.
at different
Because
ends
men like
of the
him
choices
always
they
do.
made.
Until the
Later
stories
that
meet.
night, Chidi searched for her
He
on
didn't
social
disappear after the truth
media.
came out. That
and
would have
for
been
the
too
first
clean.
time, he realized
Instead, he
something
adjusted.
unsettling. She had moved
He became quieter with
on
her,
without needing
more
him to
cautious,
regret anything.
less generous,
Chidi
but
didn't
still
reach out
affectionate enough to keep her unstable.
Regret has pride,
because men
and
like him
pride
don't
hates
cut ties
exposure.
immediately.
For
They
weeks
reduce
after
them.
the event,
He still
Ada stayed
called,
on
just
his mind
not
in
every
ways
morning.
he didn't expect.
Still sent money,
Not as nostalgia,
not freely.
not
Still
as
said,
desire,
I love you.
as a
But
question.
faster now, like
She
something
had looked
and
whole,
every time she tried
not
to pull
angry,
away, he
not
reminded
desperate,
her of what they had shared.
not wounded,
You know
in
me,
tears
Art.
ever would have.
I didn't plan for
At
things
home,
to get like
Kemi
this.
noticed his
As if
distraction.
marriages happened accidentally.
The way he
She
stared too
started
long into space.
asking questions
The
she had never asked
way
before.
his responses
Why
became
didn't you
delayed.
tell me?
She
When were
asked
you going
what was wrong. He said
to?
work stress.
Was anything real? He hated that question
She
most.
nodded, even
Don't
though
do
something in
this,
her chest
he said
tightened.
once. You're being
Marriage had
emotional.
taught her how
That
to read
word again.
silences.
Emotional.
One evening,
A word used
she
to
found
silence
an
women
old
when
photo on
logic
his
threatens
laptop by
man's
accident.
comfort. At home,
Ada
his wife
and she
stopped asking for money.
years ago,
That scared him.
laughing,
No reminders.
simple joy,
No complaints.
no luxury,
No messages.
no
Just
filter.
silence. The kind of
Kemi
silence
closed the
that
laptop
watches.
slowly. For
He
the first
noticed
time
she no
since
longer
their wedding,
asked where he was
she
going.
allowed herself to
No
ask
longer
a
waited for
terrifying
him to
question
eat.
without pushing it.
No longer
away.
adjusted her schedule
What if I
around his
didn't
moods.
get the best of
She
him?
became polite.
What if I
And
only got the
politeness
urgency?
in marriage is
Ada
dangerous.
didn't know
The
she
woman
had
he
become
lied
a
to,
reference
the one who
point.
never knew she was the other,
She
began
wasn't
to
trying to
unravel
prove anything.
quietly. She stopped
That was
posting
the irony.
pictures, stopped answering
Both
friends'
had
calls,
made her uninterested
stopped trusting
in
her own
comparison.
judgment. Because
She
when
no
you discover a
longer
lie
rehearsed
that big,
imaginary
you don't just
conversations with
question
Chidi
the
in her
liar.
head.
You question
She
yourself.
no longer needed
How did I
him
miss
to
it?
see what he lost.
How did I believe him?
Her
What
healing
else am I
wasn't
wrong
loud.
about? She
It
replayed
was
every
consistent.
conversation,
She
searching for
learned to say
clues
no
like
without
a crime scene
guilt,
investigator who
to
realized
walk
too
away
late that the
without
suspect had
explaining,
been sleeping beside her.
to expect
One
effort
evening,
without
curiosity
negotiating for
defeated
it.
fear. She clicked
She
the
stopped
wife's
confusing
profile again.
potential with
This time,
promise.
she scrolled deeper.
When a
Past
man
birthdays,
once tried to minimize
past
her
holidays,
needs by calling
past
her
years.
too much,
And that's when she saw
smiled and
it.
said
A
calmly,
picture from a time he
"Then
had
I'm
been
too
with her.
much
Same
for
day,
you."
same week,
And she
same
meant it.
city. Two lives,
That
running
version
in
of Ada
parallel.
would have shocked
Her
the
chest
woman who once
tightened so
waited
hard
7
she
years
thought she
for
might pass
happiness
out.
that never
Because
arrived.
the realization wasn't just
Kemi
that
finally
he lied.
confronted
It was
Chidi,
that he
not
managed
with
time
anger, but with
carefully,
exhaustion.
precisely,
I feel like
like a
I can
man
fight him for your
maintaining two
presence,
different
she
versions of
said quietly.
himself. The wife,
Chidi
meanwhile,
bristled.
found messages,
He listed
not
everything
loving
he did,
messages, transactional
everything he
ones,
paid for,
transfers,
everything he
promises,
provided.
excuses.
Kemi
She
listened,
recognized
then
the
said
tone
something
immediately.
that landed
It was
heavier
the
than
tone he
shouting
used
ever
on
could.
her when he
I didn't
wanted patience without
marry a
accountability.
provider. I
Only now
married a
it was
partner.
being used on another woman,
Silence
and something
filled the room.
shifted. Not
Chidi
rage,
realized too
clarity.
late
The first
that the emotional
contact between the two
laziness he
women
had
didn't
practiced
happen
for years
dramatically.
didn't disappear
No
with
screaming,
marriage.
no
It
insults,
had simply
just
been
a
hidden behind
message.
excitement.
Hello. I think
And
we
now
need to
the
talk.
performance was over.
The other woman stared at
The
her
message
phone
came on a
for a long
random
time
Tuesday.
before replying.
Ada,
Because deep
I hope you're well.
down, she had been
I've
waiting
been
for
thinking
this.
about us,
They spoke cautiously at
about
first.
everything.
Trip.
I
Words
owe you an
he
apology.
used often. It became
Ada read it
impossible to
once.
ignore the pattern.
Then
Same
again.
phrases, same
Her heart
promises,
didn't
same
trace.
future plans,
Her hands
even the
didn't
same
shake.
jokes. That hurt the most.
That's how she knew she
Because
had
jokes
healed.
feel personal.
She didn't
He
respond
told me he was
immediately.
broke, the wife said
Not
at one
to
point.
punish him.
The other woman
Not to play
swallowed.
games.
He bought me
She
a bag that
simply
week.
didn't feel rushed
Silence,
anymore.
heavy, permanent.
When she finally replied,
He didn't know
her
yet
words
that they were
simple.
talking. He was
I'm
still telling
well.
each woman a different
I
story.
hope you are too.
Telling his wife the
Nothing
other
more.
woman meant nothing.
That
Telling the
response
other woman
haunted Chidi
the
more
marriage was
than any
already
confrontation could
over.
have.
Standing standing in the
Because
middle, confident,
forgiveness that doesn't
because
ask
he
for
believed
reconciliation
women stayed
is a mirror no
divided.
one is ready
He
to
believed
face.
shame would keep them
Time
quiet.
did what
He believed
confrontation
wrong.
never could.
He found out the same way
Chidi's
most
marriage
liars do.
didn't collapse
Not through
dramatically.
confrontation,
There
not
was
through
no scandal.
shouting, through a change
No
in temperature.
shouting that
The
neighbors
calls
heard.
stopped landing the way they used to.
Just
The
distance.
messages felt shorter.
The slow
questions
erosion
sharper.
of warmth.
Both women,
The quiet
separately,
realization
had gone
that
quiet.
love fueled by
And
urgency
silence
cannot
is
survive
terrifying to
routine.
men who live on control.
Can we stop trying
The
to earn
first crack
what
came
should
at
have
home.
been freely
His
given?
wife stopped cooking his
She stopped
favorite
asking for
meals,
presents.
stopped checking his clothes,
Stopped initiating
stopped
conversations
reminding
that
him of
led nowhere.
birthdays and obligations.
She began to
She
see that the
moved
man
through
she
the
married
house
wasn't
like
cruel,
a guest who
just
already knew
unfinished.
she was leaving.
And
One
unfinished
evening,
people leave
he asked
wreckage without
casually,
intending to.
"Is everything okay?"
Chidi, on
She
his
looked
part,
at him,
grew
really
increasingly
looked at him.
restless.
"Yes," she
Not
said,
because he wanted
"I finally
it back, but because
understand."
something in him
That
recognized
sentence followed
loss
him
too late.
out of the room.
He
The
began
second
to
crack came from
understand painful
the woman
truth.
he never
He had
meant to hurt,
mistaken
or
comfort
so
for
he told
compatibility
himself.
and
She
excitement
didn't
for
cry
growth.
anymore. She didn't
That was
beg.
not his mistake.
She didn't ask for
Mirror.
explanations. She simply
And
said,
mirrors are easy to
"I
abandon
spoke
when you
to
don't
your
like
wife."
what they show.
The room went still.
Ada
"What did
eventually fell in love
you do?"
again.
he snapped.
Not quickly.
Interesting how quickly fear turns
Not
into
desperately.
anger. "We talked,"
Not
she
gladly.
replied. "That's all.
This time,
That's
she
all."
chose a man
He
who
laughed
showed
nervously.
consistency before
"You
chemistry.
know women exaggerate." She smiled
Someone who
then,
listened without
not because
being reminded.
it was funny, but because
Someone
it
who
was over.
planned,
She
not
didn't
because he feared
exaggerate,
losing
she
her,
said
but
quietly.
because he
She
valued her
filled in the
presence.
gaps you left.
She
He tried
did not
damage
perform
control.
wife duties for a title
Apologies
she didn't.
that arrived too late.
She did not
His